Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Mudirayat. Shrinvatam Svagata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridiyantasto Hyabhadrani Vidhunuti Suritsatam Nashta Preshu Bhadrashu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttame Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapters 2, verses 29 and 30. Nastasaucha mudhadiyo jata basmashti tarinaha vishantu diva shiva dikshayam yatra daivam surasavam. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Those who vow to worship Lord Shiva are so foolish that they imitate him by keeping long hair on their heads. When initiated into worship of Lord Shiva, they prefer to live on wine, flesh, and other such things. Purport. Indulging in wine and meat, keeping long hair on one's head, not bathing daily, smoking ganja, marijuana, are some of the habits which are accepted by foolish creatures who do not have regulated lives. By such behavior, one becomes devoid of transcendental knowledge. In the initiation into Shiva mantra, there are mudrik ashtaka, in which it's sometimes recommended that one makes his sitting place on the vagina and thus desire nirvana, or dissolution of existence. In that process of worship, wine is needed, or sometimes in place of wine, palm tree juice, which is converted into an intoxicant. This is offered according to Shiva Agama, a scripture on the method of worshiping Lord Shiva. Verse 30. Brahmacha brahmanan shaiva yadyuyam paranindata setum vidhararam pumsham attaha pasanamashritaha. Translation. Bhrigu Muni continued, since you blaspheme the Vedas and the Brahmanas, who are followers of the Vedic principles, it is understood that you have already taken shelter of the doctrine of atheism. Purport. Bhrigu Muni, in cursing Nandishvara, said that not only would they be degraded as atheists because of the curse, but they had already fallen to the standard of atheism because they had blasphemed the Vedas, which are the source of human civilization. Human civilization is based on the qualitative divisions of social order, namely the intelligent class, the martial class, the productive class, and the laborer class. The Vedas provide the right direction for advancing in spiritual cultivation and economic development and regulating the principle of sense gratification so that ultimately one may be liberated from the material contamination to his real states of spiritual identification, aham brahmasmi. As long as one is in the contamination of material existence, one changes bodies from the aquatics up to the position of Brahma. But the human form of life is the highest perfectional life in the material world. The Vedas give directions by which to elevate oneself to the next life. The Vedas are the mother for such instructions, and the Brahmanas, or the persons who are in knowledge of the Vedas, are the father. Thus, if one blasphemes the Vedas or the Brahmanas, naturally one goes down to the status of atheism. The exact word used in Sanskrit is Nashtika, which refers to one who does not believe in the Vedas, but manufactures some concocted system of religion. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said that the followers of the Buddhist system of religion are Nashtikas. In order to establish his doctrine of nonviolence, Lord Buddha flatly refused to believe in the Vedas, and thus later on, Shankaracharya stopped the system of religion in India and forced it to go outside of India. Here it's stated, Brahmacha Brahmanan. Brahma means the Vedas. Aham Brahmasmi means I am in full knowledge. The Vedic assertion is that one should think he is Brahman, for actually he is Brahman. If Brahma, or the Vedic spiritual science, is condemned, and the masters of the spiritual science, the Brahmanas, are condemned, then where does human civilization stand? Bhrigu Muni said, it is not due to my cursing that you shall become atheists. You're already situated in the principle of atheism. Therefore, you are condemned. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhuktale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Dejatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaurabhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Good morning. I'd like to seek blessings from all assembled Vaishnavas. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to purify myself. Please forgive me for any shortcomings. So there are a few points I want to summarize. I've referred to a couple lectures from His Grace Madhu Pandit Dasa, Vishwatma Das, and other purports by Prabhupada, and some other conversations. So first, a few points on the curse. There are a few verses here, some describing a few behaviors that the followers of Shiva ascribe to. Now, the followers of Shiva, they do have the goal of getting renounced from the material world, just like us. They are seeking transcendental knowledge, but they're doing it by using these tamasic practices that we talked about, things like wine, things like women, marijuana. There are elevating methods in the scriptures for those who are in Tamaguna and for those in Rajaguna and those in Sattva Guna. So there are practices for tamasic people, and some of these followers have ended up learning that they should indulge excessively in these practices in order to get detached from it. So basically find a tamasic practice and fall into it completely, indulge into it until you grow sick of it and automatically detach from it. This is the philosophy of some followers on this system. So just reflect on how difficult this is to actually follow and have a tamasic person really do this if practiced correctly. Because how many people actually get sick? I mean, really sick of chasing sense pleasures. It's true, we all do get miserable from that. We've learned that from Prabhupada in his writings. But how many actually get so fed up from these pleasures that they stop altogether? Usually, if they don't have something better to attach to, they just move from one indulgence to the next. Especially true with sexual desires, one of our heaviest contaminants. So it's very hard to remove these desires by ourselves. But luckily, Krishna Prema can relieve us of this affliction. It also talked about in India how Shankara drew Buddhism out of the country, replacing it with impersonalism. Now, a point on this that I learned, the followers of this system, they do actually believe in a form for the Lord. They believe in heavenly planets and all of these things. But the impersonalists believe in these as more of a means that exist inside of material nature, a means to reach their impersonal goals. That is, they think these forms, the devatas, the heavenly planets, they're all under the modes of material nature. And so they've built spiritual paths around these and concocted spiritual systems, as Prabhupada said. Even the impersonalists, including things like single-pointed bhakti on an Ishta Devata as part of their path. So they see the value of the bhakti sensation, but the difference is that the impersonalist is seeing the Ishta Devata more as a tool that we can use to develop that bhakti sensation. So that's the complexity here. That's the big difference between a Vaishnava and an impersonalist, right? Think of how difficult it would be to develop that true divine loving relationship with something that you're really using as a material tool. So it can get really confusing fast in the impersonalist road, but fortunately, Prabhupada gives us really simple instructions to cross the ocean of material existence. He says by associating with the holy name of the Lord, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, we can cross this ocean, because that Maha Mantra, it's not an ordinary sound as materialists would have you believe. It is a spiritual sound. It comes from the spiritual dimension. The Lord is in his name. The mantra is not just a material tool for us, but it is truly a divine vibration. The second point I want to speak about is a common theme I've heard from a few teachers, and it's about the pastime in general. And we're in the middle of this scene where curses are being traded back and forth, right? Daksha was offended by Shiva and cursed him. Then Nandishvara cursed the Brahmanas, and now Brigamuni is cursing the followers of Shiva. So we have this escalation going on, and now we've got a room full of devotees that are getting carried away. And so if you've ever seen two people or two groups of people fighting, this kind of escalation, it's really familiar. Everybody just goes on top of each other until the whole room ends up bewildered. So in fact, you'll remember this verse from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 63. Krodhat pavati samohaha, samohat smriti vribrahma, smriti brahmshad buddhi nasho, buddhi nashat pranashyati. Translation from Prabhupada. From anger, complete delusion arises. And from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. And when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. And so that's what's happening here. This assembly has fallen down into the material pool. They've forgotten some of their divine nature. They've lost their intelligence. They're insulting and cursing each other. But look at how tricky this is, right? These are spiritual topics that they're discussing, but the anger between the groups is so great that it's causing everybody to temporarily forget their position. And that's how strong Maya is. And in this case, the anger can be traced back to pride, of course, Daksha's pride, Nandishvara's pride, etc., etc. So we ask, what is pride after all? Pride, as Prabhupada teaches, it's a belief that we are lords over material nature. So if I'm proud of something, it means that I believe that I am the doer of that thing. And it also means that I'm stealing the enjoyment for myself as well, too. So Prabhupada described pride in this purport to Bhagavad chapter 15, verse 5. I'm just going to give a section of the purport. Pride is due to illusion, for although one comes here, stays for a brief time, and then goes away, he has the foolish notion that he is Lord of the world. He thus makes all things complicated, and he is always in trouble. Okay, so we think we are lords over material nature. We get this idea of ourselves as controllers, as enjoyers. And then from that idea, that's where we start to develop all sorts of expectations about how we should be treated, how people should respond to us, how the world should move around our desires, right? And when we don't get that, that's when our pride gets broken. That's when we get angry. So let's say I'm really proud of the job that I'm doing at work. I feel really high about it every day. I work hard, do a good job. I'm a great communicator, a great peer. And then one day I get some negative feedback from my boss. And just like that, I get angry, right? How could my boss say that? Does she see everything that I do around here? And I'm getting angry because my pride is hurt. But if instead we go to work and we work hard and we devote our works to Krishna and we leave the fruits to his pleasure, then when we get that feedback at work, it's a different feeling, isn't it? Right? We're humbled, we're grateful, we're learning we have a chance to do our work better for the Lord. And that's one of the differences in the mindset between someone who's proud and someone who's learning to become humble. So we have to manage our pride and we have to just keep reflecting on our anger. After all, anger can be explored as an opportunity to teach us about the obstacles in our own paths, because anger, after all, comes from that sudden breaking of our own attachments, right? So even a silly example, if I'm careless in the kitchen and I drop a glass and I break it on the floor and I get angry, on reflection, that little event gives me a lot of information about the things that I am still holding very deeply onto in terms of my attachments. And I can start to unpack and realize even how silly some of those attachments truly are. So I've assembled a couple practical tips to help me reflect on and manage my anger, and I'll share them with you. I've collected these from online conversations between some devotees, and I hope they serve. First, reduce your expectations of yourself and others. So if I'm thinking I'm doing a really great job on something and I can't wait to hear everybody tell me that they loved it, I'm creating that expectation on my own. I'm doing that thing to myself. I'm creating that pride. Second, if possible, if you're in an angry situation, avoid contact for some time with that situation or that person. Allow the disturbances in your mind to settle down a little bit. This is easier said than done, of course. Can be very difficult in the moment to say, Mataji, I'm totally bewildered. My intelligence is low. I just need 10 minutes to go take a break and then I can come back and do this better. It can be very difficult, but a very good tactic. And then third, of course, take time to breathe deeply, then recite the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this breathing will calm down our physical responses, and the Maha Mantra, of course, it's the nectar that will take us back to our true divine nature. So it's not easy to manage this anger on a regular time, but if you pay attention to it, you'll notice it popping up like I do. And as we go down this path, if we pay attention to these tips and we work on ourselves, we'll slowly improve our